Hi Year 3. So the learning objective today is to use some maths vocabulary, and that just means words. And the words that we're going to be using are AM and PM, midnight and midday or noon. And we're going to start by thinking about how many hours there are in one day. So we say in one day, and that includes the night as well, that there are 24 hours. So there are 24 hours in one day and night, and that can be broken down into two sets of 12 hours. As you know that 12 add 12 equals 24. So we're going to be thinking today about how it's broken down into two sets of 12 hours. So on the sheet for today, you might have already noticed that there is an instruction box, and next to that on the left-hand side there are written out two sets of 12 hours. Now we're going to think about how we're going to do that now, because I'd like you to write out your two sets of 12 hours. So we're going to write out our two sets of 12 hours. So we're going to be writing these times as digital times. You can see here I've written 12 o'clock as a digital time. Now, because we're going to be writing two sets of 12 hours, I think it would be a good idea to write your 12 o'clock at the top of your page. Halfway down your page, write your 12 o'clock, your next 12 o'clock, and then we can fill in the times in between. So you're going to have after 12 o'clock comes 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and so on until you get to your 11 o'clock, and then it will be 12 o'clock. When you get to your next 12 o'clock, again it restarts, so then you go to 1 o'clock again, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and so on. But I'd like you to only go up to 11 o'clock this time. So when you get to 11 o'clock here, you can stop, because that is your 24 hours, because what happens after this 11 o'clock is that it goes back and it restarts up here at 12 o'clock again. So you might have seen from the instruction box that the first thing I'd like you to do is to label midnight, midday and noon. So let's first of all think about midnight. So midnight, as the name suggests, comes in the middle of the night. It's a time that normally, hopefully, you'd be asleep. Maybe occasionally you might have a cheeky midnight feast at this time. So let's think about where that would come on our list of times. So I'd like you to take a different coloured pen now to do this labelling. And what we're going to do is we're going to label midnight. Now midnight is at 12 o'clock, but which 12 o'clock is it? So we're going to have midnight is going to be our first 12 o'clock here. Please leave a little gap here. The reason for that will become clear a little bit later on. And then we'll label this 12 o'clock as midnight. Okay. So we've done midnight. We're now going to label 12 o'clock midday, or another word for it is noon. So if that's 12 o'clock midnight, then our other 12 o'clocks, so just two 12 o'clocks in each set of 24 hours, must be this 12 o'clock here. So this 12 o'clock here we're going to label, so we're going to leave a little gap again, and then we're going to label that midday. So again, as the name suggests, midday is in the middle of the day. This is a time that you'd normally be having lunch. Certainly at school you'd normally be having lunch. It's halfway through the day. And there are two names for midday. You can call it midday, or you can call it noon. So in each day we have two sets of 12 hours. But how do we tell the difference between 6 o'clock here, which would be 6 o'clock in the morning, and 6 o'clock here, which would be 6 o'clock in the evening, or 3 o'clock here, which would be 3 o'clock in the morning, and 3 o'clock here, which would be 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, the way that we do that is by using AM and PM. So I'm sure you've heard of AM and PM before, and maybe some of you use AM and PM, but I thought you might be interested to know what they actually stand for, why we use AM and PM. Well, the words come from Latin, which is a language which we don't use anymore, but that the Romans used to use, and AM stands for ante meridiem, which translates to meaning before midday, so before 12 o'clock midday. And PM stands for post-meridian, which translates to past midday. So actually it's really easy to remember PM because PM still stands for past midday. So AM, because it's before midday, or before lunchtime, this is our morning. And PM then, because it's past midday, it is your afternoon, because remember noon actually means the same as midday, doesn't it? So it's your afternoon, and also your evening. So PM is your afternoon, but also the evening as well. So let's come back to our sheet of our 24 hours and just think about which of these times are AM and which are PM. So we're going to start off with our 12 o'clock midnight up here, and this little gap here I've left for us so that we can write in our AM or PM. So 12 o'clock midnight is 12 o'clock AM, 12 o'clock in the morning. This is the time when you would normally be asleep. And then we go to our 1 o'clock AM, again when you would normally be asleep, 2 o'clock AM, and so on until you come to about 7 AM when maybe you'd be waking up, 9 o'clock AM when maybe you'd be at school. 12 o'clock, however, is when it changes. So this is midday or noon, and this is when we change to 12 o'clock PM. And then all of these times after 12 o'clock midday or noon, which is 12 o'clock PM, are all then past midday. So they are all going to be PM times. And then after 11 o'clock PM at night, that would then go back to the next hour would be 12 o'clock AM midnight. So what I'd like you to do now is to fill in the rest of the AM and PMs onto your sheet. So for the next part of this lesson, our little friend here, Freddie Fox, has been up to some different activities at different times of the day, and what I'd like you to do is to fill in those times onto your sheet. So when you hear what time Freddie is up to something, I'd then like you to make a note of that onto your sheet. So you might need to pause the video because what's coming up next is some little clips of Freddie doing various different activities at different times. To make it a bit trickier, the times that Freddie Fox does various activities aren't in order, but they'll be coming up next. Once you've done that, you can then move on to the twist it, and then maybe if you've got time, the solve it as well. Okay, well done everyone. At 12 PM, Freddie had a break for lunch. At 11 AM, Freddie Fox played on the swing. At 8 AM, Freddie Fox had some shreddies for breakfast. At 3 PM, Freddie Fox enjoyed some gardening. At 8 PM, Freddie Fox fell asleep. He was exhausted. At 9 AM, Freddie started his homeschooling. At 2 PM, Freddie completed his toilet roll art. So once you've written down the different times that Freddie was up to those different activities, the next thing to move on to is the twist it. So for the twist it, you've got some different times and you have to write down what you'd normally be doing at those different times. So you can do a day at a normal school day, or you could do a normal homeschool day that we're doing at the moment. It's up to you. Once you've done that, you could move on to the solve it. A bit of an optional extra thing that you might also want to do, if you've got a little friend a bit like Freddie, you could think, oh, what would they be up to at those different times of the day as well? And maybe you could take some photos of them doing different activities at different times of the day. or draw some pictures of them doing different activities at different times of the day. So you don't have to do that, but that might be a little fun extra bit to do. So once you've done your Twist It, there's a little optional extra challenge, and then there are the Solve Its as well if you get onto those. Okay, well done everyone.